Hey, yeah, what's up? This is Disciple Martial Occurrence, rain back up in this anti-Illuminati all day. So, we covered in the first video that, you know, black supremacy is not the way, right? We need to know who we are as a people, but not to the point where we don't now understand that, you know, we're going to be imperfect in the things that we do. Some things are going to be imperfect and we need to be called on it. We need to be held accountable. We need to continue to grow after 18 years old. I know it sounds simple, but I got to cover this. You know what I'm saying? Teachers have to make things simplistic. You know, I'm not going to try to dance around your head. I'm going to try to break it down so it can be applicable to your life. Okay? So, we have to continue to have leaders over us after we depart from our family, after we depart from our mother's house or our father's house. We have to still have people to instruct us and teach us throughout life. There are those who I believe God have appointed, and there are also those who have applied themselves to knowledge and information. They have applied themselves to it. You know what I'm saying? And you'll be fooling yourself to think that everyone can do the proper research on information and knowledge to grow themselves. In a perfect world, everyone could grow themselves. Okay? But I don't think everyone's designed to grow themselves. Everyone's not designed that way. You know, and that being said, you know, we have to have people over us that continue to grow us after 18. This is very important, you know, because this is where we get off track. This is where we start making up our own way. This is where we lose our way of knowing what happened in history. We should always be looking to history. We should always be informing each other. You know what I'm saying? We should always be doing that, you know. But, so, I got to stay on, you know, what the crux of the matter is on this video, which is basically, you know, being a black supremacist is not the way. It's not the way. It's not the way because every race has an assignment in the earth. That's the first thing you need to know about race. Every race has a specific assignment. Every race has a specific assignment. And when you realize that everybody will play their position in humanity and let everyone grow and flourish as a race to be who they should be and do what they should do, you know, and everyone won't be trying to do the same thing. So understanding self is very important. Understanding who you are is very important. But to take what you've learned about self and then hold it supreme over someone else is where error comes into play. That's where error comes into play because everyone has their assignment. Therefore, supremacy of any race really doesn't make sense because everyone's here to do something that the others cannot do. So therefore, they're supreme to you for what you can't do that they can do. There's always something a race can be supreme to another about concerning what they do and what they have done. So, you know, we all have our own assignments. All races have their own assignments. That's how it was supposed to be. And a lot of white supremacy came into play and they just took over resources and assignments and everything. You see where I'm going with this? They took over all the assignments of many races. That's why this is dangerous, because you enslave everyone to your now toxic assignment, and the races are not doing what they're born to do. And it's not born to be a slave to another race. No race is born to be enslaved to another race. Every race has their assignments. And it would be a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful world when everyone understood this. But I'm gonna give you a perfect example. But so it's gonna go hand in hand with not practicing black supremacy. But what white supremacy did was it took over like I said, it took over the assignments of the blacks, the Hispanic, Latinos, Asians. That's what white supremacy did here in America. It took over all the assignments of the races. We all have our own assignments. Now we'll never know what that was supposed to be, because white supremacy dominated so many decades. We're so off track that it's a fallen world as far as purpose goes. As far as purpose really goes and how it really was supposed to be, we'll never know till we get to heaven. We'll never know. Because white supremacy took over the assignments of non-white races. This is why this is so dangerous. This is why supremacy of any race is dangerous, because you begin to take over assignments of other races. Even with you may not think so with even in the black community how that's possible. It is. It's always possible to dwarf the assignment of another race with some form of supremacy. Okay? So it's important to know who you are. It's important to know what you're here to do. It's important to see the history, the things that you created, but don't get into the point where you don't feel like anyone has a place in the world and no one has an assignment in the world. You see what I'm saying? Everyone has their assignment. I don't even got to talk about color. I don't got to talk about none ethnicity. I don't got to talk about none of that. I am talking about, obviously, every human being and therefore every race has a purpose in the earth. Not just one. So we can't act like we're God's people and no one else matters. You know what I'm saying? And we may be the most endowed in doing this, the most endowed in doing that, but then there's more responsibility to be humble and to utilize the gifts and talents of other races. If you are the king of the jungle, you got to utilize the jungle. You don't get to sit back like a fat cat and just say, look how great and good I am and look what we do. You got to get to utilizing. You have more responsibility. Okay? If you dominate as far as race, you have more responsibility, not less. Not to where everyone caters to you. This is what happened in white supremacy. They started to see how they was building buildings and doing all these things, inventing things in America at the speed of light. They was doing all these things, and they just sat back and said, we the baddest. Just because they didn't do it, just because you didn't see them do it, don't mean they ain't do it. They felt they was the baddest. And it all backfired because they didn't take care of other races properly, because they didn't look and consider the assignments of other races. Now crime and all these things are out of control because you forsaked the assignments of others, and therefore they occupied themselves in any way they could. Dope dealing, all these other things. This is because one race dominated and suffocated the assignments of others. It's part of it. That's part of the reason why. And some would say it was an intentional suffocation of the purposes of the black community, the African American community. It was an intentional suffocation. And so now that's where you get it. Now you have all these problems that we don't know how to get out of. You know what I mean? So, but black supremacy is not going to be the way. You know what I'm saying? Because the first thing they're going to want to do with black supremacy is what they did in the past. They want to they'll let everybody else be supreme or practice race supremacy but black people. I mean, look at it. You got white supremacists, you got neo-Nazis, they got militias. They got real armed militias. As soon as black people try to arm themselves and form militias, the FBI is looking at them. I know I'm right. I know that I'm right about this. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay. So we got to begin to use, I mean, it just comes back to what I believe is that, we have to form, human beings have to, we need, the black race needs God. You know what I'm saying? We need to enter into the spiritual kingdom because God can do things that we cannot do. He can send his angels to do things that we cannot do. You know what I'm saying? And if you really have a walk with God, see, Americans, the problem is here, a lot of Americans don't really know what a real spirituality is. You know, the closest thing they know is witches and warlocks, voodoo, hoodoo, Santeria. That's the closest thing they know to spirituality. And they have not, a lot of Americans have not seen a forming of the spiritual God's kingdom, the good spiritual kingdom, the God spiritual kingdom, the godly kingdom. They have not seen a formation of that with the activities thereof. You know what I'm saying? Because people didn't get close enough to God. They had church attendance. So there wasn't a time, they didn't advance enough in God to manifest a formation of what God wants to do in the earth. There's no formations of that. So when you start talking about this, people don't even know they don't know what to reference to in America. They don't know what to reference to. When you talk about allowing a whole race of people to come into a spiritual kingdom, so therefore we can untangle ourselves from the negative manifestations. People don't even have a reference points to that kind of talking. And I have to do a whole another video on that, man. You know, I do, because I get off track. But when it comes to, I believe in being confident. I believe in knowing oneself. I believe that this is the way. But the problem is when you say that you're God's people and we're killing each other. We're doing everything that is the opposite of being God's people. This is where you then begin to you don't have the right to say that you're God's people when you're doing the opposites. That's just common sense. But this is what people hang on. It's like, okay, we're God's people. And before you realize, what happens is you feel that you don't realize that you're capable of corruption. You're capable of deterioration. And you thinking that you can just use being God's people as a bulletproof vest, that you're infinite because you're a God's people. But I can show you in the Bible where God's people got off track God's people was destroyed. I can show you this, and I'm gonna have to show people because they need to see how even God's people did meet destruction when they didn't do things God's way. When they didn't do things God's way, it went wayward. It didn't go right. You know what I'm saying? So that people will understand, okay, you're God's people, but you can't stop there. You can't stop there. If you are chosen, you can't stop there. Okay? You can't stop there. You're human, which means you're susceptible to being harmed. You're susceptible to being a failure. Things don't just happen to be in the world. There's nothing that just happens to be that way. Everything that looks the way it looks. You can go back and see why it became what it is, whether it's good or bad. You understand? So we have to understand that being God's people is just not good enough. I'm not saying it's not enough in itself. And that doesn't take anything away from God. Because you have your identity, or you feel that your identity is being his people, the Bible says God's people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. I'm just saying. That's what the word says. God's people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. So if God is telling you that you can be destroyed, then what you doing? That's all I'm saying. And so this is where black supremacy gets rooted. When you start thinking that you can just go through life and you can just do anything, and then and not looking at what you're doing and thinking that it's just supposed to be like that. This is where you get a certain supremacy, because you just feel like no matter what happens, this is, we are who we are. There's always an excuse. And you can find yourself becoming corrupt. You can find every human race is capable of deterioration and corruption. Everybody. And you should notice when you see people are dying, you see people are losing their lives. That means purpose is being lost. Look how much purpose is being lost on a daily basis. Look how much purpose is being lost. That's what you got to look at. And when you realize, okay, I can be corrupt, I can be destroyed, then you start applying the proper informations. Then you start taking heed to your teachers and your leaders when you realize, man, I need to know something. Something's not right. I need to be, and that's the whole reason why, in essence, the black community is in the state that it's in. It's because of a lack of information and knowledge. Okay? Because when you know better, you do better. That's in any situation. So, okay, what do we need to know? What information? Because you also need to have information. You need to be informed of things that manifested. You need to be informed of things that have taken place. You need to be informed of things that occurred so that you can adjust yourself according to wisdom. You know what I mean? This is important, to be informed. To be informed is why people get on the news every day in, day out, in this country. They are informing. Some of them are not informing everything that's right, or it's not factual, but there are outlets that give, like your local news. It gives basically the factuality of what happened for the day. Everything that occurred that was newsworthy. You know what I mean? You need to be informed. I'm not saying that you need to look at the news all the time and everything like that. And I'm not saying that you need to be a news junkie, but at some point, man, you have to take heed of what's going on around you so that you can adjust yourself. So, for example, if there's people that's stealing bikes in your neighborhood, and it came on the news, 10, 15 bikes are stole, and you're not informed of that, right? So you go without it before you go and get a bike, not realizing that there are bike thieves in your community. You go get a nice bike. I'm talking about like $500 bike. And you, because you didn't know and you wasn't informed of your surroundings, now, man, your bike is like a piece, like a steak, like filet mignon, sitting up there on the block, and you don't even know it. And you would have pulled your bike in the house instead of locking it up outside if you had knew the information of bike thieves in your neighborhood and to adjust yourself. And you would have been able to adjust yourself properly. So this is why informing yourself is important, so that you can make a shift and an adjustment accordingly within your community. You need to know information and knowledge and for you not to be destroyed. God will lead you. Don't get me wrong. With knowledge, God will lead you. I'm not taking away from. I think some would say that the scripture that says people are destroyed from a lack of knowledge. Some people would say also that includes information. You need to be informed of what is going on accurately. And you have teachers for that. You see how this goes? You have teachers to inform you of the state of your community. Like me, I'm not really giving you knowledge. I'm giving you information. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm informing you of how the black community is killing each other. That's information. That's not knowledge. So if you had came from a different country after being gone, let's say since the 60s, you was an old school cat, I'll let you come live with me, right? You can say, oh man, I'm just glad to be back home, man. Man, how's the black community doing, man? You know what I'm saying? That's the questions you're gonna ask. So if I am not informed and I tell this man, hey, everything's good, man, you know what I'm saying? Everything's going good, man, everything's going good, man. Just go outside and have a good time, and whoever you meet, man, just, you know what I'm saying? Be yourself, man. And I don't tell him, yo, man, they robbing each other these days, they killing each other. Yo, you can't just stop and talk to people. That's not knowledge, that's information. And that information will protect that person's life. And it goes up the ladder as far as information goes. As far as information goes, it goes up the ladder. You need to be informed what your government is doing. You need to be informed about what your community is doing. You know what I'm saying? Because the same community that you say you love and that y'all are God's chosen people, you need to be informed about them, because you might go down the wrong block talking about brother and they pulling out a gun and robbing you. And you're sitting there with the most innocent look on your face being robbed because you was not informed. So you can have all the good intentions in the world, but you still need to be informed and not deny the information that people give you. As much as you want it to be a good world, in the black community right now, it's killing going on, it's craziness going on, and if you deny that information, you're gonna be a casualty too. Yeah, you go out here playing around, you know what I'm saying, trying to do your thing out here long enough. Going to these clubs when you don't need to go. Going out here and going to clubs when the club scene is dead pretty much, because it's just too dangerous. It ain't like it used to be. You can't be no cat. You could be from the 80s. A cat could be from the 80s, right? Come back to America. Yeah, boy, I'm gonna go down there and jump and dance around, man. But like, bruh, I don't think you want to do that. because the times have changed, and then you start giving them information. You need to know information about your government, the military, the police, everything, even your neighborhood, even down to the building that you live in. You need to have information so that you can adjust yourself properly. This is important. So I had to touch on this first. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna take a couple parts. So I'm gonna come back with another part, but you, we gotta have an understanding of everything accurately when it comes to leaders, those who and what their purpose is. Their purpose is not to beat you up. Their purpose is to inform you, so you are not destroyed in America. But black supremacy blinds you. It doesn't really inform you necessarily. It just tells you how great you are, and for the most part, and how great and how low everyone else is. That's not going to be the right path for you. You're not going to be going the proper way, especially now when you might not be able to trust other black people. And you out here trying to show love, and you out here trying to be for the people, and you're getting misused and abused. So you have to have information to properly adjust yourself so that you can be safe and be effective.